Hi, this is Dominic Keating. I played Lieutenant Malcolm Reed on Enterprise, as you probably know, and you are listening to the NX 7062 podcast. Enjoy.
Hello. It is that time again for the NX 7062 podcast. And yes, I do hope you are here to enjoy the evening with me, this very rainy evening here in Jersey. It's not nice out tonight, and I had to go run around in it because hey Robert, because I have got stuff to do. This is the weekend I am heading out to California for the Hollywood show. Going to be hanging out with J.G. Hertzler and Bob O'Reilly, as well as, now it's down to two of the last three members of the Land of the Giants, because unfortunately, and ironically, Stefan Arngrim, the actor who I am friends with, who got me into the booking thing, and he's the one that actually encouraged me and asked me for my help, has an inner ear infection, and his doctors, he actually got a second opinion, have grounded him for 4 weeks. So unfortunately, he's not going to be able to go, but I will be there with 4 people. The fabulous Melissa Longo is actually going to be helping me corral the Klingons on Saturday, so I absolutely 100% cannot wait for this weekend. Plus, I get to go back out to California, which is always fun. So completely looking forward to that. Not only am I looking forward to that, but I'm also looking forward to the fact that when I get back, it is going to be one long-ass day. My plane lands just after midnight on Monday. And, I have got some echo going on here. I was playing with my knobs earlier. And I land at midnight on Monday, and I come home, and then I have a day job, and then I have a break where I will hopefully be able to grab a cat nap, because as of right now, barring any unforeseeable complications in the next week, John Billingsley will be joining me right here on this show. And I am so excited. He is such a fabulous interview. And I hope you guys are going to spend, after tonight, I hope you guys are going to come up with some amazing questions. Hopefully, maybe this little chit chat will help spark some stuff. But before we get into all that, as you can see, I'm actually wearing, and I know it's funny because the background, hey, War Dog, I am wearing my Star Wars Rise of Skywalker shirt. The title, I will admit, the title is much cooler than the film. Did not like how that film ended. Not going to even get into it. But this is why I am wearing this t-shirt. I mean, I threw it on this morning. I could have changed. I decided not to, and here's why. This weekend, I was in State College, Pennsylvania. Oh, yay! My hat is at the post office. That is so exciting. Remember, pictures. You can email me at Stephanie@NX7062. I want to see the hat. I want to share it. If you're okay with that, I want to share it maybe next week on the show. Maybe we can get John Billingsley to start doing some ads, touting it for me. But yeah, definitely, War Dog, I want to see pictures. I purchased a Chancellor robe. A Chancellor robe pin signed by Bob and JG, and also their health pins both signed. Oh, Robert, that is an amazing addition to your already large Klingon connection, and I'm assuming those are all going with you to Rhode Island Comic-Con. Okay, so I went to State College this weekend, and I went to my friend's Halloween party, and the theme was villains, and he said not necessarily Disney villains, but villains, and I said, well, hell, Sith Lords actually are now Disney villains, thanks to Disney's buying of Star Wars, so I went as a Sith Lord. For a lot of reasons. A, it's a favorite character of mine. B, I already had the costume. All I had to do was dig up one of my lightsabers. That's always the case, isn't it? If things arrive on time. And that's awesome. We can't wait to see what you look like in the hat. I'm having that issue with my Square reader for this week. I actually went to Walmart and bought one because they're cheaper. Buying them at Walmart, because my free one has yet to show up. They shipped it last week, and it's probably going to get here after I leave. So I go, and I found a lightsaber. It was great. I was really comfortable. Costume's really comfortable, really easy, and again, didn't cost me anything because I already had all the components. So of course I go as a Sith Lord, and then of course somebody starts talking about Star Trek, and somebody starts trashing Star Trek. He actually called it garbage. called Star Trek Garbage. Now, if I tell you that my friend who was throwing the party has a dog whose middle name is Tiberius, I will tell you that that comment not only didn't sit well with me, it didn't sit well with Billy. And then Billy and I did a little bit of Trouble with Tribbles where he was talking about the Enterprise is nothing but a garbage scow. And I said, no, the Enterprise needs to be all the way as garbage. So, yeah. And then somebody else said something like Disney Plus is more accessible than Paramount Plus, which I said, no, it's not. You just, I'm like, it's a channel on Prime Video. You don't get more accessible than being a channel on Prime Video. In fact, Paramount Plus works better as a channel through Prime Video than it does as an app. The app never really worked right for me, so I'm glad I have it through my Prime account. Anyway, so there was this whole thing, and then there was yet another conversation about how you can love Star Wars and Star Trek. And somebody commented, well, look, you're dressed as a Sith Lord. They said, you've got a lightsaber leaning against you. I said, yep. And I've got a live Star Trek podcast on Monday nights. What's your point? So here I am on my very live Star Trek podcast on a Monday night wearing a Star Wars shirt with my Enterprise background just to prove that we all can coexist. And Zod was here a minute ago. I thought maybe he'd try and jump up on my lap so you guys could meet him, but nope, he disappeared again. So that is why I'm wearing the shirt, to show my solidarity and show my love of both science fantasy versus science fiction. Apples and oranges, you can't really compare them, and you are entitled to love both. You don't have to. You can like one and not the other. But please just don't be a dick about it either way. You can joke about it. Absolutely joke about it, but don't be a dick about it, because there is a difference. Okay, so Lower Decks, which I just watched tonight so I could catch up, and I am so glad I did, because it was Enterprise related without mentioning Enterprise. Mike McMahon, oh my gosh, I love how and I thought maybe this was going to be the episode. Maybe he was teasing about how he'd love to do Enterprise if he could figure out. Maybe this was like, ha ha ha, I already figured it out. There's a holodeck program, which is so much fun. And I mean, I love the way they do kind of like what Scream did. Hello, Lasso. Hello, Lasso. Happy Monday to you too. Scream sort of did this thing where they know they're a movie, so they're making fun of being in a movie and being in a sequel. And that's kind of what they were doing on the holodeck, which was really great. Yeah, there you go. Love both franchises. Yeah, actually, because War Dog, you and I were going to appreciate this. One of the one guy at the party that loves Star Wars. He doesn't have anything against Star Trek, but he loves Star Wars. And he goes, I saw the prequels in the theater. He was all proud of himself for seeing the prequels in the theater. And I'm like, hold my beer. I went, oh, that's so cute. I said, I saw the original movies in the theater, so hush. Of course, he was blaming his parents for the fact that he was born so late, etc., etc., etc. But I just couldn't help myself. I'm like, yeah, that's really cute. You saw the prequels in the theater, sweetheart. I saw the originals in the theater. I have not seen the finale of She-Hulk. Is it somehow Star Wars or Star Trek related? Not that you're not allowed to ask that question here. I'm just curious if that's why you're asking me. And I really do want to see it. And for anybody that does have Disney Plus, She-Hulk is awesome. I've heard mixed reviews on Andor, but She-Hulk's pretty freaking awesome. Love it. So much fun. That's actually another show that actually knows it's a show, because she breaks the fourth wall all the time. It's hysterical. So Lower Decks, Enterprise without being Enterprise. They're playing in the holodeck, and part of the holodeck program is they go back in time and they end up at the forming of the Federation. It is literally exactly what Daniels did in Enterprise when he was trying to explain why Archer could not sacrifice himself to destroy the Xindi or the Xindi weapon. And you can't do this because you right down there, that guy to the left of the dais, that's you at the forming of the Federation. And that's literally, they were up on that same balcony in Lower Decks. And you could even see the blue, the Enterprise blue of the uniforms, but they never pointed anybody out. They were talking about this very important octopus, but nobody bothered to point out that Captain Archer was down on the dais. No, but there's an homage to something else. Yeah, War Dog, I knew you would appreciate that Star Wars story. It's an homage to something else. If it's, well, can't be anything DC. I almost said something DC related, but all right, so we'll talk later because by the time this gets over, I'm going to be ready to crawl into bed because I have a job in the morning. So, okay. So there was that. But then the best part, I think the best part, and this is a spoiler alert, but Lower Decks has been out. So besides the whole forming of the Federation, they actually killed off Boimler's transporter twin to bring him back to life to work for Section 31. And come on, that's props. That is so props to Mike McMahon because he did something. He just made something canon that's kind of in the novels because that is exactly what the novels say happened to Trip. They faked his death so they could bring him back to work for Section 31. So that little maneuver, that little Section 31 maneuver, which I know you guys out there will correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not think any place else was it ever made canon that that's what Section 31 does. So he just made the scenario for Trip Tucker canon. So Connor, looks like you can come back now. Yay! The other thing that I thought happened, and I turned on the subtitles just to see, I thought Mariner in the beginning called Boimler Captain, which would have fit with the whole Trip Tucker thing, but she just said Cap because I turned on the subtitles so I could see exactly what she said. So honestly, not falling for that stuff again. I'm not falling for the whole pineapple means Enterprise thing again. So that's why I checked and see. The other interesting or fun news is that Creation has finally got the 57-year mission website up and running. And the guests so far, and not surprisingly so, is William Shatner and basically everybody from TNG. Which makes sense because they are now not just from TNG, they're also from the 3rd season of Picard. So makes complete and total sense. And once again, Creation is light years and warp speed ahead of Repop because they take for flipping ever to announce anything. We still don't know who's doing what in Seattle. We just know it's in Seattle over Memorial Day weekend. What I really respect about Creation is they pre-sell. I don't know why you should do it as early as possible because you'll sell more tickets. But they pre-sell all the gold tickets the last day of the convention. If you want to keep your seat from one year to the next, you can fill out a form. There's a form at the end of the schedule, and you can fill out a form and reserve your exact same seats without even knowing who the hell's going to be there. You just reserve the seats. So I think it's really nice that Creation, makes a point of coming out early with, starting their guest list so that people, can start getting excited, especially when you spend the kind of money you spend on gold seats and you can get excited early because Creation starts making those announcements. So, and it's also back at the Rio. I am so excited it's back at the Rio. You have no idea. There were definite perks to Bally's, especially when you get there early and you don't really have anybody to hang out with for the first day and a half, and you're on the Strip, so you can go do things a lot easier than you can at the Rio. But no, I'm really glad that it's back at the Rio. All right, so we are going to do a very brief little recap of John Billingsley's career, as mentioned on Wikipedia, which I loved because I skimmed through it and I was able to just pick out some highlights that I wanted to share with you. Maybe things that you didn't know he was in. I mean, it's funny because Enterprise came up a lot earlier in his career than I thought. At least according to Wikipedia, there wasn't that much going on before. Like Enterprise seemed like to be like one of his first really big roles, but you feel like you've known him forever because you see him in so many things all over the place. Plus, he was a stage actor. He's done vaudeville. I had this conversation with him in New York. His wife, Bonnie Frederica. Oh God, please don't. I hope he's not watching this because I'm completely butchering her last name. Everybody calls her Bonnie. She starred in Chuck. That's where I first found out who she was. Had no idea she was married to John until I talked to him in Mission Chicago in 2016. And there were pictures of them together. First thing out of my mouth was, I loved her and Chuck. They got to meet her a few years later in Vegas. She accompanied him to Vegas, and she is fantastic. I had a lovely chat with her. She's awesome. But they've worked together. They worked together in Regeneration, which was the second season Borg episode of Enterprise that drives some people crazy because they don't understand how First Contact changed the past. But in true Enterprise style, they never really said who the Borg were. So the whole thing with Q bopping them into the Borg is still, still makes sense that they wouldn't know who they were because Archer didn't know who they were, except for that very brief drunken mention by Zephyr Cochrane, and they still never said the Borg. And Starfleet was trying to shut him up. So yeah, but I just found it really interesting that Phlox was like one of his biggest roles very early in his career. The other cool thing is that I found out he was born in Media, Pennsylvania, which is not that far from me, and which I thought was cool. And then his family bopped around until they settled in Weston, Connecticut, which was not that far from me when I lived in Massachusetts. So geographically, John and I were kind of bopping all over the place. Kind of close. But his first role, I thought, was actually in 1991 in, of all things, a Nintendo training video. And he played a difficult customer trying to return something. And I think that just kind of set off his career because, honestly, he has played weird, annoying, disturbed characters or doctors. If you go through, he's been on Scrubs, he played a corrupt lawyer soon after the Nintendo thing, and then not that long after that he landed Dr. Phlox, and he played a Dr. Phlox, and then he played I can't read my own. And then he played the medical examiner. He went from Phlox, he played the medical examiner in Out of Time with Denzel Washington. Then he goes on to play a serial killer in Cold Case. And he had the distinction of being the only serial killer that got away with murder on that show. But then they got him in the end because in the last episode of the season, they killed him. Let's see. He also played, and I love this, he played a blunt force victim in 6 Feet Under. I love 6 Feet Under. I need to go back and watch that episode because I probably at the time went, wait, I know that face. Because just because you're a victim and you end up being a corpse does not mean you're not going to come back and talk to somebody in 6 Feet Under. The other cool thing, and this is, me and my little connections. Yes, he did play a blind artist in NCIS. Yep. I did see that too. Okay, so the one thing that I loved about this is, me and my 6 degrees of separation fetish. He was in 6 Feet Under with Peter Krause, and now Connor is in 911 as a recurring character, bomb squad leader. I'm going to say Jamie, I think that's the name they gave him on IMDb, opposite Peter Krause. The reason I started watching 911 was because of Peter Krause, because I loved Peter Krause in 6 Feet Under, so I kind of tend to follow him. And according to Connor, he is a dream to work with. He's a great guy, along with the rest of the cast of 911, which I thought was it makes it much more fun to watch the show when you know that the actors on the show are just really good to work with, especially when you're only on set for maybe a day doing a scene, and you walk away from that with some nice things to say about the actors. I think that's really pretty amazing. Also because Connor has been in 911, and because he wrote his last appearance, had him in a car with Angela Bassett. That puts me 1 degree of separation from Wakanda, because she plays the mom, and Wakanda Forever is coming out next month. I've seen the previews. I know some people here do not see previews, but I loved the preview. This is complete sidebar. I loved the preview. And it is 1 degree of separation from Star Trek because Connor and Angela work together. So I can say this. The scenes of how they're honoring, obviously they're honoring T'Challa, but of course they're honoring T'Challa and Chadwick Boseman at the same time. And the scenes were absolutely beautiful. Well shot. Everybody's wearing white, which is I want to say Korean tradition. Thank you, MASH. But I'm pretty sure it's Korean tradition to wear white at a funeral. So it's not unheard of for cultures to wear white for funerals, and it's just so beautifully, and everybody looks gorgeous. And I'm really looking forward to seeing it when it's released next month. So let's see Prison Break. Here's another one. He was in Prison Break in the first season of Prison Break, playing the mysterious brother of the vice president. And guess who was in later episodes of Prison Break? He was in about, I want to say 3 or 4 before he got killed off, but Dominic was in Prison Break, and he died mysteriously, and he was playing a dead body, which, again, another aside, which is really funny. He played a dead body. Well, played a dead body. His character died in Species 4, but then when they panned back to his corpse, he was still breathing. One of these days, I might have to say something to him, because in Prison Break, he was laying on his stomach, and I had seen Species before I saw Prison Break, so he's laying on his stomach, and I'm thinking, so much easier to play dead when you don't have to worry about your stomach and your chest rising and falling. But you also have to blame that on the continuity people and everybody else that was watching The Gate, and saw, The Gate is when they watch something to make sure there wasn't a hair in the lens or something. Well, you know what? Okay, hairs in the lens is one thing, but your corpse breathing, that also should have been something you caught. So not necessarily on him. Okay. So something else that John was also in CSI New York, as was Dominic. Dominic played a drug dealer in CSI New York. Dominic tends to play evil people, and John ends up playing disturbed people or doctors. That's kind of interesting. The other funny thing that I found out is he and Bonnie actually did a HD TV show called My House is Worth What, where somebody comes in and appraises your house. So they spend an hour. So I'll have to look that one up. You get to walk around John's home, I guess. I don't know if he still lives there. I know he and Dominic are neighbor-ish. I think they don't live too far from each other. The Hollywood Hills tends to be a very close community, and I am not giving anything away because Dominic has mentioned Hollywood Hills before. So no state secrets here. But yeah, I just think that's interesting. I don't know if it was it didn't say whether it was a special episode, like come tour celebrity John Billingsley's home, if there's like celebrity episodes, but I just thought that was kind of cool. And then in 2008, I know I am flying through this because I don't want to spoil next week, but I want to give you all something to think about. Throw out some other shows that maybe you guys are all fans of, so that you can maybe think of things to ask them. I've always wondered how difficult it is to play a blind person when you can see. Somebody else that would be good to ask that is the actress who played Mary on Little House on the Prairie, and I bet you Lasso can tell me who that was. Darn it, can't remember her name. But she played blind for most of the time that she was on that show, and I find that, having to look off into the middle distance and keep your gaze, I think that would probably be kind of challenging for an actor. So that would be a good question, maybe. But in 2008, he was coroner Mike Spencer in True Blood, and I do remember going, "Oh my God, that's Dr. Phlox!" when I saw him in True Blood. I loved True Blood up until the last season. I thought the last season was just kind of terrible. I don't know. HBO has this really bad habit of giving you like the most amazing cult. Thank you, Lasso. I knew it was a Melissa. Like I knew it was Melissa Gilbert, and I knew she was another Melissa. And thank you. You never let me down. I love that. Thank you, Lasso. So yeah, she would be somebody to ask. Okay, so I do remember. Okay, so True Blood. Back to True Blood. Yes, Melissa Sue Anderson. They overall, I loved Little House on the Prairie. I thought that was an absolutely phenomenal show. It's one of my favorites. Back then when I was growing up. So True Blood has a cult following, also based on novels. Everybody loves it, and then they completely fuck up the end. So it seems like they carried that tradition on with the Game of Thrones. Again, based on novels, amazing cult following. Let's fuck the end up for no reason. It was just, I'm like, what? Why? I think maybe we should start calling it the Enterprise Syndrome, where you completely screw up the end of a series that people love. I'm just saying. I think that's because, in fact, when Game of Thrones had that such a poor ending, and people were all over the internet complaining about it, a lot of Enterprise fans put together some great memes about really, really hold my beer kind of memes, like, yeah, you think you've got problems. So I always thought that was great, because I think we're going to start calling it the Enterprise Syndrome when you have a really great show that just has a really shitty ending. And yes, I'm trademarking that phrase, the Enterprise Syndrome. Let's see. In 2012, he played a doctor again in Scrubs. I never liked Scrubs, never got behind Scrubs. So, Studio Suite, that's why. Oh, okay. I'm watching you guys, sometimes I get distracted. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And then I realize, it's Chat Pack 2.0 for a reason, because you guys can absolutely chat with each other while I sit here and yap at you. No problems here. And I already mentioned that he and Bonnie, have worked together. They've done stages together. They've done vaudeville together, cabaret kind of stuff. And she was in Regeneration. In fact, there's a picture that floats around where John's in street clothes and she's still borged out. Because, probably, I'm sure different shooting days for the Borg stuff and for the Flock stuff. So, that's how Hollywood works. And that's why when you ask somebody, when I was at a convention, I think it was my first convention, my first Vegas convention, I should say, and somebody asked Connor, remember that episode where you jumped out of a tree? And he's like, that was 15 years ago, so I'm going to say no. It's because not only was it 15 years ago, but remember, when they shoot things, they shoot them out of order. So it's even really hard to kind of conceptualize, if you name a scene, where'd that fit in like everything else, because it happens to be Precious Cargo. And the reason that I remember the title to that particular episode is I just think Precious Cargo is a cute name. And that's actually kind of the nickname for Baby Yoda. I have a couple shirts that actually say Precious Cargo with his little picture on it. But also Padma Lakshmi was in it, and I watched her on Top Chef. I thought she was great on Top Chef. She can't act. At least she couldn't in that episode. I'm not sure I've ever seen her act like play a role in anything else, but her performance was terrible. I just didn't like it at all. Thought it was very flat, very two-dimensional. So that's kind of what sticks in my head about that episode, is how bad she was in it. And what's really funny, and I actually meant to mention this a couple weeks ago, for the 26th anniversary, I was sitting downstairs, I was watching TV, I was getting the show together, and all of a sudden I look up, and you know what? I think I had the TV on mute. I might have actually been on the phone, because I look up, not realizing, and there's Padme's face. She's doing commercials now for I don't remember, for a nonprofit, for a very well-known nonprofit. So I feel bad not remembering which one it is now. But I'm like, of all times to see that face on Enterprise's anniversary, and there she is yapping. Like I said, it was a great cause. I believed in what she was saying, but it was just funny to see her face on Enterprise's anniversary. Florence Jean Castleberry's CV handle was Hot Cargo. Oh, that is so funny. And for anybody who does not know who Florence Jean Castleberry is, you can all kiss my grits. How's that, Lasso? Only fun here on the NX72 podcast, going off on whatever tangents I feel like, because it's my show. And honestly, to have John on next week, it's going to be tangent full, because John is that way. He jumps around. I hope to get as many questions answered as possible. As with all of my interviews, I always tell everybody, everybody says, well, how long is your show? And I'm like, well, if I'm by myself, at least half an hour. But when I have, yeah, exactly. Kiss my grits. I got to see the emojis for this. Kiss my grits. There you go. When I have guests on, we just go until it's over. Because I've got John coming up next week, and then I believe the 7th of November. So we got John. Yeah, we got John on the 24th. Still haven't figured out what I want to do for the Halloween show yet. Honestly, I could just as easily be sitting around just binge watching horror movies, but I will be here with you guys to celebrate Halloween. And then right after Halloween, on the 7th of November, we are going to have the one and only Rod Roddenberry to talk about Star Trek, his dad's philosophies, what Star Trek means, and answer. And he will be here to answer your questions as long as you promise not to ask him about anything that's pending, because he can't answer you on that. Let's see. Those that don't know Flo are suffering an unknown loss. Yes, those who don't know Flo are definitely all right. Since you mentioned, let's see. All right. This is without looking anything up. I can do the Star Trek 6 Degrees of Separation from the TV show Alice. Here we go. So, Mel Sharples, played by Vic Tayback on Alice, was also in The Monkees, along with Arlene Mattel, who was in Star Trek. So there we go. They both worked on The Monkees, and there's the Star Trek connection because Arlene was on Star Trek. And that's without looking it up. I mean, I could delve in a little further and see if there's any more solid connections in that, but since this is not the 6 Degrees of Separation show, I just did it as easily as I could. Oh, wait! I take that back. Oh, I could shoot myself. Vic Tayback himself was in Star Trek. Hello. He was in, oh crap, Piece of the Action, because he does really well playing a gangster. Vic Tayback was in Piece of the Action. There we go. He was around in the 60s, Vic. He's getting everywhere. Oh my gosh, I suffer from that too, Word Dog. Don't worry about it. The other thing that we suffer from, that I suffer from is dictation. My phone sucks with pronouns, so I'll dictate something because it's too long to type, and sometimes I'll miss it and I'll send it off to somebody, and Lasso knows this, and the pronouns will be completely screwed up because for some reason. Which is great. My phone doesn't recognize pronouns. You know, it's gender fluid. That's amazing. But it does not help when I'm trying to have a specific conversation with somebody. So don't forget, this was just like that. Like I said, this was just a literal just glossing over because I don't want to get too specific with John's career. I just kind of wanted to throw it out there for all of you. So you can think of it, maybe go look at his IMDb page or do what I did, look over at Wikipedia, get some insights and come up with some really great questions. And I have said this before, and I'm going to remind everybody within the sound of my voice. John cannot be embarrassed. So I intend to ask him about fucking a tree on True Blood. And he's like, that's not going to embarrass me. I said, I know, but I'm really curious about it. So he already knows that question's coming. So if you guys want to think of a really embarrassing question, he also doesn't have a problem embarrassing his castmates to a point. I'm not sure where he draws that line, if he does. I mean, John, I'm not sure John has any lines. But yeah, so if you want to ask him a question, maybe about a castmate or something, he may spill the tea about some of his Enterprise co-stars. Entirely possible. We should get him. There's a song he sings to Deo. He wrote a parody of Deo, and I am definitely going to try and get him to do that. In fact, I'm going to write that in my notes right now that John needs to do his Deo parody because it's so great. And if you've never seen him in a panel or seen a panel on YouTube or anywhere else, we've got to ask him. We've definitely got to ask him to do the Deo parody because it's really funny. And again, it's all about an actor's life. And I love the behind the scenes stuff. That has to do with just life on set outside of just, getting up there and doing your lines. So dude found a way to show his bare ass on screen. There you go. So, all right, guys, this is winding it up because I want you all to go out and get me questions. Get set because, like I said, right now I am booked. John is booked. But he is still, as far as I know, he is still on set down here on the East Coast, down in Georgia. Hopefully he is breaking many legs, doing amazing work, which I'm sure he is. And hopefully he'll have some information maybe that he can share with us about the new show. Don't know, because obviously it's still filming. But that would be great. But yeah, but like I said, he's a great communicator when it comes to scheduling. So I haven't heard anything, and hopefully I won't everybody cross their fingers and knock on wood, because I'm just so excited to have him on the show. So yeah, get ready for next week. And Dr. Fox himself, John Billingsley, will be joining us. And don't forget, until I see y'all, you don't have to kiss my grits, but you do have to live long and prosper.
Hey, this is Connor Turner. You've been listening to the NX7062 podcast with Stephanie. Enjoy your evening.